Thank you, Terry. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular City Hoyt Lakes Council meeting Monday, May 11th at 6:30. Tammy, roll call, please.
Mayor Breland.
Here.
Councillor Zins.
Here.
Segler.
Here.
Pop.
Here.
Peterson. Here.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to consent agenda. Tammy?
Approval of City Council minutes from April 27th, 2020 regular meeting and May 5th, 2020 special meeting. Item 7, correspondence. Animal Control Officer, March 2020 report. Rams, March 26, 2020 board meeting minutes. And City of Virginia notification dated May 6, 2020. EPA Brownfields grant application not selected. And item 10, claims payroll receipts.
All right, thank you. Is everybody okay with the consent agenda? If so, could I get a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councillor Segler. Support.
I'll support that.
Support by Councillor Zins. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Breland.
Yes.
Councillor Zins.
Yes.
Segler.
Yes.
Pop.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Move down to guest and citizens forum. Is there anybody in the audience on that wants to speak?
Let me see, 2 people have just entered. And 1 more just came on. Let's see.
Nice match.
It must be Patty and Mitch. Okay, we'll move down to reports from staff. Sue Sowers, librarian.
We began our curbside pickup last week, and it's been going very well. What the community can do, and I support with residents and materials we have at our library for the time being. And the public can request, they can make a phone call or an email myself, or go on the online catalog and put holds on books, and then we collect them and give them a call at a day and a time for up outside. We place them in a plastic bag, and everything has been sanitized, and we've been very careful. So we feel that it's a safe service that we can offer right now. And for those that maybe don't know exactly what they would like to have check out, we will browse for you and just let us know what kind of things you might like, what types of movies or books. We also have other items, puzzles and games and different items like that to check out. So that's been going well. More and more libraries are providing this service now in the Arrowhead region after the governor's last order about allowing curbside and deliveries. And we really started planning for this reading program this year. We have one. We will run from June 1st to July 1st. And a lot of it will be virtual, but we do have some things in mind that should make it a lot of fun this year. So stay tuned for that.
Anybody have any questions for Sue? Thank you, Sue. Public Works Supervisor Snetzinger.
All right, good evening. The past week at Public Works, we put the boat docks in on both Whitewater and Colby. We are holding off on the fishing pier on Whitewater, as well as fencing off the other DNR pier on Whitewater. Just waiting for word from the governor and or the council on or the use of the fishing piers. Later this week, as soon as I think we're past the cold weather, we'll be going ahead and getting the water up and running. We've already done quite a bit of the work as far as getting pumps in place and everything ready to go. Just haven't primed anything or turned it on with the 20-degree nights. We're just holding off that. So we'll be getting that as well as the fish cleaning house up and running, I would say Wednesday, Thursday, as soon as I know where. Another thing down at Public Works, I'm working on coming up with the works summer staff, trying to come up with creative ideas for, social distancing, work schedules, alternating start times, stuff like that. Also starting to kick around the idea, talk to Chief Tim Suler, along with the suggestions from the COVID task force on how to handle PPE for these students. I've also got correspondence from Jen Altman, who is our safety training advisor. She has come up with a video for me. I spoke it to Sue Sowers, the librarian, at the last staff meeting. She said that she would possibly be able to play that video and maybe do a head count on the students to make sure they all attend it. So I'll be touching base with her in the future on that to get that lined up for their starting week, roughly the first week of June. Couple quick changes on the Suffolk Andover project. I know Emily's in attendance tonight as well. Last week, Joey Sopp, who's going to be doing the majority of the pipe work for the project, got a hold of me, and we went and checked out a couple items in regards to the outfall on the back arena road where the storm sewers empty into the ditch. There's going to be just a couple slight changes regarding how the pipe is routed to the ditch compared to the existing pipe in the ground. I don't think it's going to be any big concern. It's just a couple changes regarding how the plans were drawn up originally. That also being said, there's going to be one extra catch basin added. The north side of the arena road, the arena exit road, where Tony House and a couple other residents have properties back there, like where Tony's garage is at. There's going to be some ditching done due to the slope of the road, and there's going to be culverts placed under those driveways, and then how those culverts will empty into a catch basin to join that outfall pipe. Just a little bit of work there. A couple modifications. If Emily would like, she could elaborate on it more when she has a chance during this meeting. She also brought to my attention last week that last fall we met up, Chris Breland, a representative from SEH, Misabi Bituminous, and myself, up there on the 400, between the 400 block of Kent and Leeds. There was some drainage work to be done. That was part of a project last summer, in addition to the drain work that was done on Arlington and Andover last fall. That project was never completed, and now Emily is advising we could possibly save some money rather than going with the part of the bid that was done last fall. We could close out the project for the work that was completed last year and roll this remaining work from that project into this year's project if we were able to get a different price, because this year's prices we're seeing for the Suffolk Andover project for common excavation, the price per cubic yard is quite a bit different. So we're hoping that we can maybe just roll that into this year's project and we'd see some cost savings. Again, Emily can elaborate more on that if she chooses. If anybody has any questions, she may be able to explain it a little bit differently. Other than that, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Kenny. Questions for Kenny? Public Utility Supervisor Parent Jake.
Yep, I'm here. So a couple of things. We got a hold of Montaigne. We also contacted the mines. So starting tomorrow morning, we're going to be hauling sludge out to the mine sites. That'll take care of our spring haul. Should take about a week. So you'll see semi-tankers driving down down the street there. So on Suffolk and going out to the mine. I have identified 19 raised curb stops in town. Pete was able to get to 6 of them. We are still working on getting them put back down into the ground where they belong. So if you have one in your yard or you see us out digging, I mean, you know what we're doing, just be patient with that. I know it's a concern when it comes to mowing lawns. Some of these have been hit by plows, so we have to do a little extra work to get them back down. And then the last thing is, starting the week of May 18th through the 22nd, I think we're going to start flushing hydrants. So if you notice some discoloration in your water, that's what it'll be. We're flushing out the lines, cleaning them up for the summer. That's all I got.
Jake, I have a question for you. I did receive an email from John Thomas with MPCA.
Yes.
And he sent out that letter of compliance for being up to date with Mercury. Have you had a chance to look at that?
Yes, I did look at that. I do not have that in front of me right now. You're talking about the meeting he wants to have coming up?
Yeah, but the letter of compliance he sent out was the dates that we're gonna have to meet for the Mercury standards.
Yeah,
Are you
I'm
okay
fine.
with that? Are you okay with his dates on there?
Yeah, I'm okay with the. Let me get back to you on that.
Okay, give me a call. Give me a call tomorrow. Or maybe we'll talk about it at staff meeting. I haven't gone through it thoroughly yet. So just for the council and everybody's information, our 5-year NPDS permit down at the wastewater plant, we were supposed to have the Mercury project done a year ago and we didn't. So we're in violation with the MPCA. There's no fine at this time because they realized the legislature didn't get us the funding in time. So what they're doing is they're sending out another timeline for when we get done with that. So when we open bids on that, there'll be a timeline that project has to be done so we meet Mercury standards. So, and the other part is that 5-year permit is up June 30th. So we'll be signing a new 5-year permit this summer. Isn't that correct, Jake?
Yeah.
Okay.
So application's already turned in. We're just waiting on them to turn that back over to us.
Okay. Anybody got any questions for Jake? Assistant Ambulance Director, Jen Hall. Mel has got a ambulance directors meeting at the same time. So Jen, the new assistant, is on tonight. Jen?
I checked in with Mel a little bit a while ago and we have nothing to report, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Deputy Clerk Snetzinger. Tammy, anything?
Nothing at this time.
Mitch? You're muted.
Mayor, nothing for me tonight. Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you. We'll go down to reports from city councilors. Councilor Zins.
I have nothing tonight.
Councilor Segler.
Nothing for me either.
Councilor Pop.
One quick thing, and then there's some other items coming up on the agenda. Last week, we attended via Zoom the final meeting of the Youth in Action. Usually the last meeting of the year is basically a fun night type meeting. They hand out their yearly scholarships to the graduating seniors. So I was able to attend that via Zoom and proud to announce that one recipient from the Mesabi East School received a scholarship. So that's good news.
Good.
That's it.
All right. Thank you. Councilor Peterson.
Just that I went to the chamber meeting last week and they were able to give out 11 scholarships for students from Hoyt Lakes for $400 each.
Nice.
And
Nice.
that's
Thank
all I
you.
got.
Okay. I just got a couple quick things. I got an email from Steve Georgie today that the state Senate is trying to pass a bill right now for the CARES funding. The state of Minnesota received $637 million in CARES funding for the federal government for the COVID response. What the Senate's trying to do is break it up per capita. So take that big number and then Hoyt Lakes has 2017 citizens. We'd get so much per citizen. They're working on it right now. The details are not completed yet. So that's one of the ways they're thinking of splitting that money up. So I don't know what that number is going to come out to yet. I'll keep everybody posted on it. And the other thing is that Brownsfield grant. I know it was in the consent agenda, and that's too bad. We did not receive that Brownsfield grant. If we ever move forward with the Chena building, the Bow School, excuse me, we don't have money for doing the Brownsfield and finding out what hazardous materials are in there. So that was too bad on that. So that's all I have. We'll move to old business. Public hearing on proposed wastewater treatment facility improvements. I'll call the public hearing to order. So Tammy, if I'm correct, we have to open it up for any questions.
I believe yes.
And Brian, you're on?
Yes. Everyone hear me all right? All right, thank you.
Yes.
So to start, you guys should have a PowerPoint presentation in your packet. Does everybody have that in front of them? I'll do my best to point out where I am as we flip the page here. And so this presentation, the public hearing, is for the amended facility plan. And the reason we have an amended facility plan is we added work for the new trickling filters at the wastewater plant and then a mechanical screen. And so this public hearing is based on the changes of that facility plan. And those are required for the MPCA and PFA funding for that project. And actually, a lot of this will be review material. I presented a lot of this information back in December when we first talked about the decisions in front of the council with the new trickling filter or rehab of the old filter. So a lot of that information you guys have already seen. So going to the second page of the handout. So the topics we're going to discuss is looking at the additions to the facility plan, which were really new trickling filters and a new mechanical screen. We'll talk about the alternatives, cost estimates, and then project financing. So the first thing we'll review is a little bit of the issues with the existing trickling filters. The concrete structure is from the 1950s, and so it's about 65 years old. And so this, I would now be on the third page of the handout, shows some of the type of deterioration we've seen in the building. That would be a piece of reinforcing steel embedded in a concrete beam that is kind of corroded away. And this is just one example we've seen throughout the building. Page 4, another example of deterioration around some rebar and where there's actually quite a bit of concrete missing. This would be the ceiling in part of the building. Page 5, just another example of the deterioration around a window. One thing to remember is this is a very humid environment in this building. So over 65 years, that water's penetrated the concrete, probably frozen around windows and things like that. And that's why you're seeing some of that deterioration. Page 6, and probably the most significant deterioration we saw on the roof. And so the roof, what happened is when it's loaded down with snow load, the roof actually deflects and the water is draining inward towards the center of the roof instead of off the roof. And so what's happening is that water ponds, it freezes, it thaws, it freezes, and it's breaking up the top layer of concrete for the roof of the structure. And so when we investigated this, there's actually areas where you could take a screwdriver or a hammer and chisel 2 inches out of the concrete that's no longer concrete. It's actually just dirt and gravel. And so there would have been major repairs needed on the roof on this structure. And actually in the one photo there, you can see a nice evergreen sprouting, which is again, showing the deterioration of the roof and actually creating some soil conditions up there for plant material to grow. So those are some of the highlights of the deterioration. Excuse me, moving on to page 7 is the cost estimate that we reviewed back in December, where we evaluated new trickling filters versus rehab of the existing structure. And if we just look at the bottom values here, we had about an $800,000 difference between new trickling filters and rehab. And when you're evaluating an old structure for rehab, a kind of standard baseline is if you're approaching or get over the 50% cost threshold to rehab versus new, is where you really want to start thinking about new because of the life expectancy of the two structures. And so the difference between these two projects was well over that 50% barrier. So that was when we looked at the costs. A couple other important things that we discussed was the life expectancy. And so a rehabilitated structure that's already 65 years old, are you going to get 20 or 30 years out of it? There's kind of a lot of unknowns with it. With a new structure, we would expect 60 plus years. The structure you have now is 65 years old. And so we'd expect at least that much out of the new structure. And so with the cost estimate and looking at the life expectancy, it led us towards that new trickling filter. The final thing we talked about was a lot of the unknowns with the existing trickling filter and rehab. Once you start digging into a project of that magnitude, it's not uncommon to run into more work that you need to do that you didn't know was there until you start rehabbing the structure. And so what was the condition of the structure below the existing media? And then as we start taking off the deteriorated concrete, how far does that go and what do we find behind it? So those are some of the unknowns that we discussed with the trickling filters. And so between these two options back in December, the council decided to move forward with new trickling filters. And so that'll kind of wrap up our discussion on the trickling filters. Going to page 9, the other part of the discussion was on screening. And so screening at a wastewater treatment facility removes rags and other large debris that will cause problems with downstream processes. So things that problems that can come from screenings not being taken out, clogged pumps as you see in the pictures there, clogging trickling filters. And I know Jake would attest to the amount of maintenance and time spent on cleaning out the existing trickling filters from rags. They impact the treatment, both liquid and biosolids. And then these screenings, because they're not removed, end up in the biosolids, which ends up in the fields, or in your case, in the mines with the land application. So that waste is getting put back on the environment. On to page 10. And this is specifically in digesters where there's been problems. As you can see here in the 3 photos on the left, you have a mixer nozzle plugged with rags. In the center, you have a gas line plugged with rags. And then on the right side, you have a process pipe plugged with rags. And so these problems with rags persist through the entire treatment process, create a lot of maintenance and costs. Next page, page 11. This is the existing screen at the facility. It's just a simple bar screen to catch rags, and you can see the spacing is pretty wide. So there's going to be a lot of material that gets through there. The existing system does have comminutors, which are basically grinding teeth that chop up debris, but it doesn't actually remove it from the stream. So that material still passes through. And then if we compare that on the next page to current technology that's available, we see a much finer screen. These screens will remove particles down to about 1/4 of an inch. And so you're physically removing all those rags that can cause problems with the downstream. And you're going to see a big decrease in staff time and maintenance from not having rags in the system. And so those are really kind of the 2 pieces that were added to the project, were the screenings and the trickling filters. And so if I go to the next slide, this would be an overall cost estimate for the entire project. So the mercury filters and equalization basin, I haven't detailed that out in here because that was an existing part of the project. Right now for construction costs, I have 8.2 million listed on here. I had not done previously an updated cost estimate for that project, so I did put some inflation on that because the last time those costs were estimated was about 18 months ago. So I did put a little bit of inflation on that. Then we have the trickling filters and the screen at 3.3 million with % contingencies. And so in the first bold line item, you see I'm estimating the bid range of costs when we bid this, probably between 11.3 and about 14 million. I've been getting a lot of contact from prospective bidders, so I think we're going to have a good number of bids on the project. With engineering on the project, you can see the total cost range between 13 and about 15.5 million. And then what I would point out is currently the city has already been set aside for about 9 million in grants. And the reason we're waiting kind of one more funding cycle on this now is that once we added the trickling filter and screen to the project, the Public Facilities Authority, who administers those grants, recognized that they need to get a little more grant for you to keep this project affordable. So the maximum grant you could get is 12 million, and currently you're at about 9 million. And depending how the bids come in, it's going to shift exactly where those funds come in. And, you know, if a bonding bill is passed, could affect that too. And so all those will kind of have to be determined here after the bid. It is possible that if the project came in cheap enough that you could do it with just the 9 million you already have, but with the scope we've had the project, it looks like you're probably going to need to get a little bit more funding to keep it affordable. The next page takes a look at user rate impacts. And I'll just step you through this table. Now, when we look at those grants you're getting, I mentioned a maximum of 12 million. Some of that grant is for the mercury related piece, and some of the grant is because of affordability. And so the state determines affordability for wastewater projects as 1.4% of the median household income. So they see that as a reasonable amount for a citizen to pay for wastewater treatment. So if you look at the first line of the table, your median household income is about 51,000. If we take 1.4% of that, gives you about $719 per year per residential connection. Currently have about 943 residential connections, and that's equivalent residential connections. So that takes into consideration commercial and other users. So if you look at that, your total maximum revenue under the affordability is 678,000. Anything above that, the state would see as being above your affordability threshold. If you go down the table, we look at yearly expenses, and on your current budgets, your expenses are about 540,000. So if you look at your maximum revenue of 608,000, subtract off your total current expenses. If you go down to the user rate impacts, you'll see yearly debt capacity remaining at 1.4% is 138,000. So, and this again is an estimate, but according to that affordability threshold, the city's debt capacity would result in about $138,000 in debt service per year, which on a 1% loan, that probably comes out to about $2.5 million of capital to produce $138,000 a year in debt service. So I just want to pause there quickly and see if there's any questions, make sure everybody's following along.
I have a question.
Okay, who's on the phone, please?
This is Mary Kay, Michael Bust,
Okay,
and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm trying my best to follow along with what you're describing, and you're doing a great job. I understand this is all expensive, and it's been going on for quite a long time, and as residents, we've continued to see our fees rise and rise. And is there a projected end that you have in mind to this? I understand things come up as you work, but do you have a projected timeline for completion?
Yes, so in terms of the project, and just to kind of bring this all in, there's been a number of rehab projects going on at the wastewater facility over the past 4 years. And so there's been phases of improvements.
Right.
And so this project would basically improve or upgrade all of the main components that have not been dealt with in the previous projects. And so once this project is complete, the entire facility, other than some pipes in the ground in between processes, will have been upgraded in the last 5 years. And so this really should, along with the other projects, carry the city out on wastewater needs, major wastewater needs, for 20 plus years. Looking at just this project, we're anticipating to bid the project in June, and it's probably going to be a 2-year completion cycle. And so this project won't be finished for a couple more years. That being said, in terms of rates, the city has already implemented some increases over the last couple of years. And then to fund this project, there is going to need to be more rate increases. And so the one part of this table I hadn't gotten to yet was to make up for these debt costs. for just this project, it's estimated it'd be between $10 and $14 per month increase per connection. So it's not per person, it's per connection. Yep. So 10
Could
to
I
14.
just stop you for 1 second?
Yep.
Because that just segues right into the next part of the question, which is, at what point, and perhaps you're not the one who can answer this, but do they begin to look at the size of the households, in all fairness? Since there are some households of 1 or 2 residents, and there are some that may have 8 to 10, and we're all paying the same thing for everything.
That would be a city council decision. That's been brought up in the past about going to meters for water. And then your
Right.
wastewater would correlate against your water usage. At this time, the city council has not made any decision on installing meters. So as of right now, we are going to keep it as per resident.
Is that possibly going to be revisited?
I guess somebody can bring that up at any time. The issue I have with putting meters in, it's about $600,000 or $700,000. Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, to install meters in town.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention that it's getting steep for a lot of us, and I realize all of this costs money, but of course we have meters and so forth for all our other utilities. And at the present time, the water and the wastewater and the trash and all that's included in that bill surpasses any, by far, of my other utilities, and they all have meters.
Yeah, I understand that, but you also got to remember the bill right now, I believe, is $105. That's your water, that's your sewer, and your garbage. So if you break that into thirds, the nice thing with the city is we can bundle it in one bill, but it's actually 3 bills that you're getting billed for.
I do understand that, and of course, when you have a household of 6 or 8 people, they have far in excess of garbage, of wastewater, and of consumption of households of 1 or 2 people.
I do agree with you.
Okay. Another meeting, perhaps.
Pardon me?
I said maybe at another meeting we can go further with that idea.
Yeah, we could look into seeing the cost of meters and see what the council would like to do. But the other point I would like to make is none of these projects, the city is out trying to get these done. These were all forced upon us by the state of Minnesota and the federal government. These were not, oh geez, what kind of project can we do down at the wastewater plant right now? These were all mandatory projects put in by the state and federal government. So I just want to make
And
that
I appreciate
clear.
that.
Yeah, I just want to make that clear that this council didn't go out wanting to spend all this money on the wastewater plant. So.
Okay, then the final part, I just wanted to say that I appreciate that there are other pots that are being drawn from rather than just funding from the residents in its entirety. And I would love it if there was a format on a piece of paper, a printout, that those of us that are not privy to the handout of today might be able to pick up at the city desk.
I'm sure if you called City Hall, they could probably mail one out to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the phone call.
You bet.
Is there any other citizens online that have any comments? I think she's the only one on, Brian. Brian, anything else from you?
Yeah, one thing I'll just finish up on those monthly increases in your table there. It says $10 to $14 per month. I spoke with Shannon Sweeney before the meeting today to get a feel for, you guys have already started to implement some of those cost increases.
Yeah.
So this was looking at the project on its own. From talking to Shannon, that last part is probably closer to like $7 to $10 increase because you guys have already started stepping up rates.
Okay.
So that's one piece I wanted to clarify on there. And so in terms of the public hearing, that would end the public hearing, and it's open for any more questions or discussion. And then I do have another item after this. So
Anybody have any questions for Brian? I have one, Brian. The current public authority grants, the grants that we've got coming, I'm assuming those are gonna fluctuate depending on the bid, because we can only get 80% for the Mercury, is that correct?
Yeah, the Mercury is an 80% grant, and the affordability is a maximum 80%. But it's after you qualify for the affordability.
Okay.
So on the affordability grant, once you kind of hit the threshold, project costs above that are going to be grant because they want to keep you at the affordability level.
Okay.
And so what it means is you are going to end up with that $2.5 million debt because it takes that much to trigger the other grant. But then once you get above that, it's all grant. And so that, doing a $10 or $11 million project might cost you $2 million, and doing a $14 million project might cost you $2.5 million.
Right.
And so
when will we find out that, or when will the MPCA give us that approval?
So right now you are already approved for the 9 million. So if you went forward, you would have the 9 million. Once we bid it and know what the actual project costs are, we will then take that bid amount to the Public Facilities Authority and determine if they can get you more money or if you need more money to meet the affordability based on what the total project cost is.
Okay.
Right now, we're in the 2020 funding cycle, and then on July 1st, we start the 2021. And so within the 2020 cycle, if they have enough funds to make the project go, you could get those awarded. If not, you would fall over into the 2021, and then we would be working through funding probably July and August to work out the rest of the funds. And so with the bid, we've put a 90-day hold period on the bid. So that means from bid opening, you have 90 days to award it to the contractor, which would put you in about the middle of September.
Okay.
And so we have 90 days there to work through the funding piece and get everything in place before you'd have to decide on a project award.
Perfect. Anybody got anything for Brian? So do I need to close the public hearing now then?
Yes.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing.
Mayor, just one thing is you may just make sure you ask if there's any additional comments.
Are there any additional comments?
Okay. Yeah, okay, then you can go ahead and close it.
All right, thank you, Mitch. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. And Brian, you said you had one other thing?
Yeah, I guess it's actually two. So with the public hearing, this council does need to pass a resolution accepting the amended facility plan. Tammy, did that resolution get in there?
Yep, it's up right now, 8A.
Okay.
So what I need to do then is looking for a motion for resolution number 2020-017, a resolution accepting the facility plan amendment number 2 for mercury removal at the wastewater treatment facility. Everybody have that in front of you?
Motion.
Okay, motion by Councilor Segler. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Support by Councilor Pop. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Breland,
Yes.
Councilors Zins,
Yes.
Segler,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Brian, one other thing you said?
One more. Yep. So in your packet, I also had a memo which basically outlined everything we just went through in the public hearing. So I'm not going to step through that. But then what it really is the council need to authorize us to publish the advertisement for bids for the project and then bid the project. And so the bid would be scheduled for June 11th as a electronic bid opening. And again, there's a 90-day hold period on that bid, so we'd have time to evaluate the financing before awarding to the contractor. And if the council authorizes the advertisement for bid, I've included an example in the memo, and then that would just need to be signed. I did have Becky's name on here, but Tammy, I think, would probably be able to sign it as well, or Mayor Vreeland authorizing us to bid. And then the ad for bid would go out in the local paper on this Friday and next Friday. and it would also be advertised on Quest CDN, which is the online construction bidding network that is used.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion right now to authorize advertising.
Correct. Yep.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Counselor Pop. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Counselor Peterson. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Vreeland,
Yes.
Counselor Zins,
Yes.
Segler,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, thank you very much, Brian.
And now, before I forget, and I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up one other thing. Last time, the letter from John Thomas you brought up earlier.
Yes. It
would be good if I could see a copy because we want to consider this project schedule and into any new agreement. And so, if you guys could send me a copy, I can take a look at that. That's the project schedule too. So,
Okay, can you take care of that, Dave?
Yep, I'll send that to him tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much.
all right.
And Brian, if you have any questions on that, I have not had time to look at that very thoroughly. If you have questions on that, call me.
Yeah, I will take a look and see what timeline he's got on there and make sure that we all together develop a good response for that. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
all right. Thank you guys.
Yep. Have a nice night, Brian.
You too.
Old business, moving to item B, 2020 street and infrastructure project quotes for material testing. Emily?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So yeah, in front of you guys, you should have a letter from me with 2 quotes for materials testing for the 2020 street project. We went out for quotes. We got one from NTS and also from Braun Intertech. Both good companies to work with. NTS is the lower quote. And as you can see in my letter, I don't have any reason to not recommend NTS for this job. If you guys have any questions on this, I can answer questions too.
Anybody have any questions for Emily on, it looks like they're going to be doing concrete testing, blacktop testing and soil testing. It's part of a road project. We got to get a testing company in here. So if no questions, I'd take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Councilor Zins to approve, I'm assuming the Northeastern Technical Services amount of $11,710?
Yes.
Okay. Support?
I'll support that.
Support by Councilor Segler. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Vreeland,
Yes.
Counselor Zins,
Yes.
Segler,
Yep.
Pop,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, Emily, we good?
Yeah, I'll just mention, since we're on the item of the 2020 street project, just letting people know we do have the pre-con tomorrow, so we'll have a better idea on the construction schedule after that meeting. Just want to make sure people know that it is coming, construction is coming, and just make the community aware of it, I guess.
I think once we get a timeline in there, Tammy, I think we should be putting an ad in the shopper, letting people know. Maybe Emily can help. Emily can help you with that, so we're letting them know what's getting. So I think there's going to be some parking issues. Councilor Peterson, I know both of your sides of your corner are going to be tore up, so
Yeah.
some people are going to have to be parking someplace else. So, okay. Okay, thank you, Emily.
Yep, thank you.
Yep, moving on to COVID-19 campground. Councilor Pop.
Okay, since we met last, at the last meeting, we had decided to open up more seasonal campsites. We did authorize the gals, between the gals and Patty, they made the necessary calls and the necessary selections. So we increased the seasonals out there by 10 more. So we're up to 35. And then we also decided to advertise for strictly White Lakes residents only that would be interested in purchasing a seasonal. to date, to right now, we have 23 more people that are interested in a seasonal site. So what I would like to suggest at this time, and it can be in the form of a motion, is that on Thursday of this week, we go through the list and offer those sites at the reduced rate. I know that the rate that was probably advertised in the shopper might have been the same rate that the last group paid, but we would reduce the rate on these seasonals by the number of days from the April 23rd or whatever date was where that normally would have opened. So we currently have 19 sites that would still be available for seasonals. That's excluding all the prime sites that we had deemed not available and the field sites, which we deemed not available. And Patty had suggested as one further option in loop 1, which is the newest loop of the campground, there are 5 sites in that loop that are crossed off as not available. So we could open those up without any problems. I don't think anybody would have any problem. That was one of the last areas that people were looking to select anyway. So if for some reason we had, if we decide to open them up, we'll open them up right from the beginning, because maybe whoever was picked first might want to go out there. But so those would be the options. So, but I would like to make that motion that we'll go ahead on this Thursday and do that with opening up those 5 sites that are in loop 1.
So your motion is to open up 24 more seasonal sites.
Yep, correct.
I'd like a discussion on the council on this.
My only question is, I understand that we're hanging on to some sites here that have been deemed, more admirable or whatever. People would like to get more, but I don't know if that makes much difference. I guess it all depends on what the governor comes out with this week. But who's actually dictating which sites are going to be available and which sites aren't? Us or the campground managers?
No, we're strictly going off of that same list, Dave, from last fall when the selections were made. We went through and we came up with a list of sites that were not available as seasonal sites. So 35 have picked. There are now still 19 on that list that have not been yet selected. And then we would open up the 5 more in loop 1 if need be.
When you're talking loop 1, are you talking down towards the end of the point?
No, I'm talking that the newest part of the last addition to the campground is so as you're entering the campground to the left there, the first road to the left. That site's basically, let me see what the
It's
number.
that little loop to the left, Dave, as you first come out.
So they're not on the lake.
No, sites 75 to 93 is what they are. They're not, no lake sites. They're in that newest edition.
So we have a total of 19.
Right now, there would be 19 without opening those up, because we have the field sites that we deem not available.
Right.
There's one site that's small. There's no power in that site. We have the one site that's right next to where possible construction of the bathroom would be. And then I think there's a double site, 7 and 13 were combined into a double, and 15 and 14 and 15 were combined. So on our list here, it showed that we had 90 sites, but I think that's actually down to about 90 total right now.
Okay.
Councilor Peterson or Councilor Segler, any questions?
No, I don't have any. I think it's a good idea.
I'm still hoping that like, I can't believe that the governor's not getting flack for not opening the campgrounds yet with the resorts being open. So I'm still kind of holding on to that he's going to allow campgrounds to be open.
Okay,
Right, and the other big piece of that pie, Chris, is once he does make that decision, I think then we as a council have a huge decision as to how we want to go forward for the rest of the camping season. Just because he says that people can now camp, I don't know that we're ready to open it up to people from everywhere to come into White Lakes, because in endangering our citizens. We as a council owe it to our citizens to then have another meeting, a special meeting, once the governor makes his next move. I think we need to call it another special meeting, and we need to sit down and hash out a plan for the remainder of the camping season, how we want to go forward.
Okay. I'm fine with that as long as we're not giving people the really nice sites yet, like the 1, 2, and all of those really sites, because I think you will make people angry by opening those up.
Yep, no, none of those sites have been released. The only ones would be that there was 5 in that loop number 1, so it would be campsite 81, 83, 88, 90, and 92. Those would be the only ones we would open up to, so that we had 24 available.
Okay.
Dan, I have a question for you. I'd like you almost to change your motion to 20 sites instead of 24. And the reasoning behind that is I've gone over the list a little bit. I've got a couple of concerns. A couple of people on that list were the ones turned down last time. There's a couple of people on that list are way behind on water bills. I think they need to be current on city bills and also pass from Chief Sewler to make sure we're not having problems like we did last year. So just a suggestion, Dan, I don't know what your thought is on that.
Yeah, so there was, when Patty brought this list in at noon, there were 21 people on that list, 2 of which had to be crossed off because of Stewart's suggestions. Since then, 2 more residents had called.
Okay.
That's how we're basically back up to 21.
And then I've been told there might be one.
And I think there's one person on there that's about way behind on their water bill. So obviously that would, before we would rent anybody a seasonal site, we would have to be current on anything else they may owe the city.
Okay. I guess if you put that in motion that they're current on city bills and approval by Chief Sewler, then the numbers, sounds like it's gonna be right around that 20 anyway.
I can add those 2 things, that pending approval of Chief Sewler and making sure that they are current on water and sewer charges.
Okay. Any other discussion from any of the council on that? So Dan's got a motion on the table to open up to 24 sites with those 2 stipulations. They have to be cleared from Chief Sewler and current on water and sewer bills through the city. Can I get support?
I'll support that.
Support by Councilor Zins. Any other discussion? Patty, I see you coming on. Is there anything you want to say, Patty?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and support. Roll call, please.
Mayor Vreeland,
Yes.
Councilor Zins,
Yes.
Segler,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. So then the other thing on the campground, Dan, what we'll have to do then is, whatever the governor decides, we'll call a special meeting next week and have to have a discussion on. Does that sound fair?
Yep, I think once we find out the direction he wants to go, I think then we need to just have a special meeting and we can come up with a game plan for the rest of the camping season.
I was told he's supposed to be making an announcement on Thursday about 2:00 again on lifting anything in businesses and campgrounds. So we should know that. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And one other thing, I say one other thing with that, I see that on the agenda, it talks about the construction workers.
Okay.
And My feeling right now is we're only allowing Hoyt Lakes residents, so I think that we need to follow along those guidelines.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Everybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to Water Carnival. I have not talked to Dan or anybody on the Water Carnival committee. I mean, do we need to make a decision on this tonight, or what's everybody thinking?
As far as Water Carnival?
Yeah, we still haven't officially canceled it.
Are we leaving that up to the Water Carnival committee?
Well, I think we can, but I still think the city council is gonna have to take some action on it. I don't know if we need to do it tonight, but
Chris, I would like to wait until after this Thursday. We hear what the governor has to say. Because, you know, even if he opens up business, I think he's still trying to get people to stay closer to home. And I don't know if we want to necessarily open things wide open again. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I mean, I'd hate to see it not happen, but at the same point, I just can't see it happening. I mean, it's got to be a 99.99% chance that this isn't going to happen. I've heard the hotel's taking reservations for that weekend, and you know, for that reason, I mean, I don't know. At what point do we step in and just say we're not going to do it? We can wait till after the governor's thing on Thursday, but I don't see it happening. I mean, they're not going to want 2,500 people gathering down there.
Right.
This is going to last longer than July, so I think we've got to accept that at some point.
I know as a comment to that, I spoke with Dr. People today, who is the medical director for the ambulance service, and specifically I had some questions regarding the campground as how we go forward out there. And we also discussed the Water Carnival. And I personally think that we owe it to the citizens of Hoyt Lakes as a council to make the decision that we are not going to have a Water Carnival this year. I mean, it's why do we want to take the chance to bring more disease into the community, to an elderly community? And I just think it's our responsibility to the citizens. You know, I know I'd love to see the Water Carnival happen, but I think by making that decision, we're making the right decision for the community. And whether it's until the next council meeting, I don't think that's gonna, it's not gonna hurt anything, but I think we need to, if we don't make the decision tonight, we need to make it at the next council meeting for sure. And I don't think whatever the governor says probably shouldn't even be into consideration.
Dan, if I call a special council meeting for next week, what I'll try to do is get the Water Carnival committee to come on to the Zoom so we can have a discussion with them. But I think you're right. I think a lot of people are making plans right now, and the sooner we make a clear decision on that, and I do agree with Councilor Segler that the odds of that happening are pretty small. I think the earlier we make that decision, get it out there so people aren't expecting it. So I'll call them, and Tammy, if you can reach out to Sharon and Dan, and I don't know what day I'll call the meeting for yet next week. I got to look at my schedule. We'll add them to that Zoom meeting. Does that sound fair to everybody?
Yeah.
Yep, sounds good to me.
And I think the next item on there is beach. I think we do the same thing with the beach. We got to make a decision on that.
I agree too. Well, we haven't obviously heard nothing from the governor. Maybe he'll have some guidance on there. I don't know what that'll be. It's going to be pretty tough to have that happen too at this point, I think. But we can put it on for next week's meeting.
Right. I don't know if everybody heard what happened today. The resorts were open in the Ely area, all of northern Minnesota. Cabins and resorts were open. There was a positive test at the Dairy Queen in Ely today. So, and that's after all the people came up for the weekend. Someone got sick and tested positive. Didn't hear if it was an employee or just somebody at the Dairy Queen.
What I read on the Timber Jay said that person tested positive May 4th.
Oh.
That's when they got tested, was May 4th.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I read in the Timber Jay article.
Okay, all right. Okay, anybody got anything else on the COVID-19?
I think we had an email requesting us talk about the men's softball too. Again, I don't know what the Legion just canceled their summer activities for ball. I don't know what the right answer there is either. So
Okay. Tammy, maybe what we'll do for that special meeting, we'll get a list of every event that's coming up for the summer, so we can make a decision at that next meeting with softball and beaches, campgrounds, water carnival. I had a list written someplace. I think there was a couple other things on there too. So golf tournaments, you know, we put Cody's tournament on every year, and I got 150 people out there in that small club room. I mean, that's another issue, which I would be very surprised if we have, but I think some of those we need to come out sooner than later so people are aware to make different plans. So
I think we need to definitely schedule a meeting for early next week sometime, Chris.
yeah, no, I do. I'm looking at my schedule here. I've got to give, supposed to give 3 days, but I can do an emergency one anytime. What works better for everybody? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
my schedule's now clear. I'm unemployed for a while, so
Oh, did you get laid off?
I took a voluntary.
Oh, okay. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, anybody?
Any one of those days.
Yeah,
Monday's fine with me.
Let's do Tuesday. 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock?
Works for me.
Okay, let's, I'll take a motion on that since we're all together. A motion to call a special council meeting on COVID-19 related closings for 4 o'clock on May 20th.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councillor Segler. Is there support?
I'll support that. But Tuesday is the 19th. Yeah, I was gonna say it's the
Oh, I'm
19th.
looking wrong one. Okay, 19th.
I amend my motion to the 19th then.
Okay. Okay, and the support was by Councillor Pop?
Correct.
All in favor, or roll call, please?
Mayor Breland,
Yes.
Councilors Zins,
Yes.
Segler,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Moving on to new business, we did receive a copy of the audited, our audit review. I don't know if everybody's got a copy of that or not. Becky gave me one, and I'll have those distributed. But remember we talked about it would be a good time to have a meeting with Tom Kelly on this, and I don't think we need to do anything super early on this. I'd like to get the council to go through that audit and look at it closely first in case you have any questions. So I think we can just table that for tonight, and if everybody gets time to go through it. So it's kind of lengthy, and it's I don't know, it's interesting read. But Tom helps when he'll be at the meeting. He'll help a lot to answer questions. So we okay with just tabling that for tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. Tammy, do I need a motion on that or not?
I don't know if you do or not on that one.
Mitch?
Mayor and it's probably fine to officially do a motion to table.
Okay, I'll look for a motion to table the special city council meeting with Tom Kelly, Walker, Guru, and Hanny.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councillor Zins, support.
I can support that.
Support by Councillor Segler. Roll call, please.
Mayor Breland,
Yes.
Councilor Zins,
Yes.
Segler,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
All right, is anything else to come in front of this council tonight?
Adjournment.
There's an adjournment by Councillor Segler. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Councillor Peterson. Roll call, please.
Last one for the night. Mayor Breland,
Yes.
Councilor Zins,
Yes.
Segler,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
and Peterson.
Yes.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night.
Good.